Hello everyone, and welcome back to episode 3 of my Halloween series here on my page. So just to recap the videos so far, the first episode was a collection of ghost stories that I received from friends on social media. The second video was for Pythian Castle and its sordid history, and today we're going back to those ghost stories and I'm going to tell you a few more. Before you do that, I would like to show you Olive's Halloween outfit of the week. So here we are in our Halloween costume for this week. Olive was dressed up as a mermaid and I was a sailor. We actually went as this pair for a Halloween party at our office, so it was a pretty good time. And it came in handy because it was raining all the rest of the day and I was still able to take this photo for you guys. So I'm going to tell a collection of ghost stories today. There's going to be several different stories, but just keep in mind that the majority of them are from two of my friends that have had several experiences over their lifetimes. They both consider themselves to be pretty sensitive and they can easily feel energy from spirits. So both of them have had a lot of experiences following them through their entire lives. So my first friend is actually the same friend who I had told you about her parents working for a cleaning company in Oregon, where they worked on that kind of children's hospital, if you remember that from the first episode. And I wanted to tell one more story from her parents and then a few from her herself, and I think they're really, really interesting. My friend says that both her and her mother are both very sensitive. She thinks that's where she gets her sensitivity from. She believes her mother is an empath, and both of them really do feel any kind of energies that go on. That's something I actually noticed from her when we were spending time together a lot because we did work together. She definitely can feel the energy in the room and know what's going on. So the first story from her is actually another experience that her parents had, and they were staying at a relative's house. Someone had just passed, and I don't know if they were there for a funeral or what they were there for, but they were staying at the friend's house, and they went into the kitchen one night, and the cabinets were opening and shutting by themselves, slamming shut, and the lights were flicking themselves on and off. And her mother says that she could feel an energy that just told her to get out of the house, to get out of there right away. And they knew that they shouldn't have been staying there. They felt that as soon as they felt the energy in the room. So they left the next morning and they went to stay somewhere else. And I can see why that would be terrifying to me. Probably my favorite story from her comes next, and why I like it so much is because not only is it creepy and it's kind of has to do with ghosts and, you know, spirits, and it's scary in that regard, but it also kind of has a little bit of a happy ending, and I always like to have something with a happy ending. So her and her family were living in a home. It was actually here in this area, and I guess their neighbors were relatives of the person who had lived there before. So it was like a mother and her children, and the person who had lived in the house that they currently were owning was her mother, was the mom's mother. So it would be grandma to the children, if that makes sense. And this grandmother was living in their house, and she actually passed away. She was fairly old and she passed away in the home, and then they purchased it. So they kind of felt a lot of the energy in the home. It seemed like a happy energy, a warming, motherly energy, and so they weren't really afraid of it in that regard. They had some experiences in the house with someone moving pots and pans around in the kitchen and setting off motion detected, like Christmas ornaments and things of that nature, and also someone sitting in her mother's rocking chair, which I think is kind of sweet. That definitely seems like something a grandmother would do. And also, I guess her radio, her brother's radio, had been messed with, and so I just think those are kind of funny things because those seem like something maybe a grandmother would do in life, so it's kind of sweet to hear those stories in death, but also terrifying. So one night, my friend is sitting on her bed, and everyone else in the family is watching television. They're watching a movie in the other room. So all of the lights are off. There's just what she can see is she has a lamp on in her room. She can see the light from that, and then in the hallway she can see the light from the television. And she glances up and looks in the hallway, and she sees like a three-dimensional shadow of a woman. And she said it was just a 3D shadow, so she couldn't physically see all the details, but just from seeing it, she took in all the details of this woman, and she says she knew she was wearing a blue dress with tight little ringlet curls and Mary Jane shoes. She knew that that's what the spirit was wearing, even though she wasn't really able to see it. And I think that's really interesting. She said she saw this figure as if it was walking into her mother's room, and it was for about 10 seconds or so, so enough for you to blink a few times and see that it's still there. and then it did vanish. So I think it's kind of sweet that it was going into probably what was the grandmother's bedroom, and that was probably just where a lot of her energy was focused, right there, going into her own room where she used to sleep and where she used to, spend a lot of her time. Over the years, my friend had experienced all of these things kind of happening, multiple times, multiple events that occurred, and eventually what happened was the activity just completely stopped, and it turns out that the mother had actually passed away, so it almost seemed like the grandmother was waiting for the mother to pass away, so it would be a mother and daughter, and she was kind of waiting for her to pass away so she could move on to the other side with her, and I think that's a really, really sweet story. I hope that's the case, and I hope that's what happened. So I wanted to tell that one because it's a little bit heartwarming, but also kind of creepy to think of someone living in your house after they've died. So the next story that I have comes from another friend who also feels a lot of spirits, and she says that she's actually had a lot of experiences since she had a family member that passed away when she was young, and she thinks that that could possibly be leading to why she has become more sensitive since she has experienced death early in life. But she lived in one particular house that she actually sent me some photos of, so I will include them here. She lived there with her parents, and she does have a young son and a husband. She says they've tried to take pictures of the front of the house, the side of the house, and every time you try to take a picture of the house, especially the front of it, everything looks really blurry and it's hard to get the camera to focus, which I know that it's hard to get cameras to focus at any time, but it's weird that multiple different times they tried to take photos and all of the times the camera had trouble focusing. So that's super interesting to me, and I will include a couple of those photos like I said. But she said that most of her experiences that have had in her life, which she's had a lot, most of them have occurred in this home. And one in particular, she said there was one room that was her son's room that had a lot of activity, and she actually at one point saw a shadow figure of what looked like a man coming out of his room. So it didn't stay his room for very long, and they did actually move him into the room with them because they didn't want any bad stuff happening to him, especially being so young. So the next thing that I found really interesting was, I guess they were in the house one day and their son had laid down for a nap, and so she went to the restroom, and it was one of those doors that had a latch. She said a latch lock, so I'm assuming it's like kind of the hotel ones where it kind of latches over, or like a bathroom one where it has one of the locks that you kind of latch over. And she said she went to the restroom and she heard this slam on the door, like something had been thrown and hit the door, and the door immediately came unlocked. So she went outside to see what had been thrown at the door, and she said not only was there no one around that could have thrown anything at the door, but there also wasn't any objects around that wasn't there before. Nothing looked like it had been thrown at the door didn't have any damage, there was nothing around that could have been thrown and had just bounced off the door, and she was alone in the house at this point other than her son, who could not have done this because he was asleep. So I think that's really scary to me, especially when you involve young children. That's really when it gets creepy. But this particular photo, you can see it kind of has a little orb in it. I don't know if you've seen pictures with orbs before, but it can be an issue with the camera. But a lot of times, they say that it could be attributed to spirits happening. So her saying that all of these things happened mostly in the same house, and she felt all this bad energy in the same house, plus them not being able to take a photo of it, just doesn't seem like a great house, and they don't live there anymore, thank goodness. But she said that she never really felt comfortable in that house, and a lot of stuff like that always happened. So I definitely can see why she would have wanted to move out of there as quickly as possible. She also said in that same house that stuff would just fall off of tables all the time, and they had pets, and the pets did not like the house. She says she has a cat that would hiss at the staircase and act like it just generally was not happy and there was a bad energy. They say that pets are really sensitive to that kind of thing, so I always find that super interesting. My pets are always attacking each other, but they never really act like they see anything or stare off into space. Some pets, I guess, probably do that, but I think you would know your own pet pretty well, and you know when they're acting abnormally, so it's kind of weird for a cat to just hiss at a staircase for no reason when there's nothing really on the stairs or anything like that. But it's definitely scary, and something creepy to think about is, if a lot of activity is happening in one house. She says that she did try to burn sage several times and it helped for a little bit, but then all of it would come back. And they do say with saging, you kind of have to do that multiple times. You have to keep doing that when people come into your home and things like that, and the energy shifts. So it definitely wasn't strong enough to keep the bad energy out of the house, it sounds like. So the last story I wanted to tell today is actually kind of heartwarming. And for those of you who know me, you know that I'm not only a real estate agent, but also I'm a dance teacher. I've been dancing my whole life. I perform with Springfield Dance Alliance here in the Springfield area, and dance is something that's so important to me. And my dance family, all of them, whether it be people from my studio back home or people from the studio I teach now or people that I've met at Missouri State when I was getting my dance degree, all of those people are some of the most important people in my life. And you really develop a bond when you're going through something like that, when you're dancing together all the time, you're spending so much time together. And dance is such an emotional thing, it's such an artistic thing that I really think it draws people together. And some of my closest people, like I said, are people that are dance people. So I find this really sweet. So one of my dance friends that I've known for a very long time told me recently that she heard a story from one of the dance moms at the studio where she's teaching that really warmed her heart. And they all basically grew up with this one dance teacher who was very close to her. She's been a huge inspiration to my friend, and everyone loved her, and she was just the kindest, sweetest, but also tough dance teacher that apparently there was around. She said that she was just absolutely amazing when she was growing up, and everyone was really close to her and looked up to her. So when this dance teacher passed away several years back, they actually opened up a studio in her honor, and everyone still feels really attached to her. And one of the moms that had actually opened up this studio recently told her a story that she picked up her phone one day and she was getting a phone call, and it was actually from the phone number of this dance teacher that everyone just cared so much for. And of course it was still in her phone. It's really hard to delete someone's contact after they pass away. I've definitely experienced that. But she looked at her phone and she's getting a phone call from this dance teacher, and obviously that couldn't be possible. She said she just stared at it and, missed the phone call, and I mean, who knows what would have happened if she answered, but I just thought that was kind of really sweet, because when you're really attached to someone, it almost felt like that dance teacher was still watching over her and trying to maybe give her advice from the afterlife. So I thought that was really sweet, and it just kind of made my heart warm, and I definitely wanted to end this video on a good note. Even though it is still the Halloween season, and get ready for next week where I'm going to talk about the majority of my experiences that I've had, creepy things that I've experienced, and I can't wait to share all of that with you. So if you have any ghost stories, I still really want to hear them in the comments below. I would love to hear what you guys are experiencing in your life personally, things you've experienced in the past. I love to hear people's ghost stories. Being creeped out is kind of one of my favorite things. So please leave them in the comments below. Send me a personal message. I would love to hear what you have to say, and I will see you in the next video. Bye guys!